Well, I began photography basically in the late 60s by borrowing a friend's camera in Kansas City and photographing a Jimi Hendrix concert. And the next morning processing the film and making prints in my friend's basement turned darkroom. And when I saw the images coming up in the tray, I was pretty well hooked and realized that's what I wanted to do for a living. I really found my roots in photographing people and really getting into their souls and then getting into their heads. Well, I think one of the things early on with my career was developing a style, playing an awful lot with kind of strong highlights and hard shadows and very little shadow detail, concentrating on basically shaping and carving a person's face. Not what I was saying necessarily in the highlights, but what I wasn't saying in the shadows that were making my pictures, I think, more successful in developing myself as an artist.
I already know that I'm going to be one step ahead of the game by doing a 3/4 shot this way.
Minimal props, minimal backgrounds, dark colors, simple clothes.
Vice versa, if it was this side of the face that I like to shoot, I'm going to have the person lean into it this way, not bring the head back that way.
So I try to strip the frame pretty well bare bones of everything except for the individual themselves and let them shine and let them come through in the photographs. Well, the exhibition basically represents about 40 years of my imagery, starting with pictures taken in the 70s all the way up to recent times. The majority of this exhibition was actually already mounted and had been an exhibition in Los Angeles, Houston, Miami, had been touring. But we added about another 25, 30 pictures for this exhibition, making it this actually the largest exhibition that I've ever held. Andy is actually a great story. The ads for LA Works were famous faces and appeared in a magazine called Interview, which was Andy Warhol's magazine. At the point in time that I was early on in the campaign, Andy had just signed a contract with Ford Modeling Agency and called me up one day, and Andy had kind of a strong stammer. He stuttered a little bit, and he called me one day and said, Greg, do you think that LA Works would be interested in me for the campaign, in so many words? And I said, well, I think so, probably. And so Andy flew out to LA, and we'd been to my home before, but he came out and we made that iconic picture for LA Works. And what's interesting, I think, in a photographer's career is you never know when that special picture is going to come along, but that ended up being one of my most recognizable images. Michael I worked with many times over the years. We did a lot of shoots, and he was an incredible subject. You know, I miss him dearly. And Michael said to me, you know, he says, I have some pet tarantulas, and I'd love to do a picture with one of my tarantulas. They have just shed their skin, and their skin, believe it or not, looks exactly like the tarantula. It's almost like a snake shedding its skin. So that's actually the skin of one of his pet tarantulas. When I shot Tom in the 70s, when we did that picture, I believe it was the late 70s, I photographed him for 3 days. He was living at the Tropicana Hotel in Los Angeles, at a hotel in a hotel room. It's a mess with shit everywhere. And I would pick Tom up in the morning at the hotel, and we would go out for the day and make pictures all over LA. And it was crazy. We'd go to Pasadena and shoot in this graveyard of old signs. Sometimes we'd go up to the Hollywood Observatory. We'd go to Hollywood Boulevard and shoot in a tattoo parlor. And for 3 days we made pictures. Today, if you get a star for 15 minutes, a half an hour for a shoot, you're lucky. The story behind this photograph is quite funny because it was made for an album cover. The name of the album, I believe, was Heart Attack and Vine. And the record company said to me, we would like you to have Tom Waits in a tuxedo. I said, not going to happen. And they go, what do you mean? I said, he's not going to put on a tuxedo. Well, would you ask him? And of course, they're way too afraid to say something. So I said to Tom one morning, I said, Tom, the record company would like to see you in a tuxedo. And in Tom's voice, he says, well, the only way I'd wear a fucking tuxedo is I'd probably get shot. So the concept behind that picture was actually putting all the blood and having the gun and the girl in the background. And later they airbrushed all the blood out of the picture. John's probably one of my very, very best friends in the world, and he's so well known for that little pencil-driven mustache that it might be fun to come in close and do a picture. And it's almost pornographic, but it's kind of an interesting photograph. I like it a lot. Christopher Walken was also one of my favorites, and a picture that I speak a lot about in my lectures, because in a situation like this with Christopher Walken, it was one of the early things in my career that taught me to be open to spontaneity, to have that spontaneous moment. And Chris was up on my rooftop of my studio and walked up to my kind of signature gray walls, and that moment clicked, and it was kind of fun. He was an odd duck, but I expected him to be a bit of an odd duck, but he was quite amazing to photograph and very present when we shot. Tootsie with Dustin Hoffman for commercial work was certainly one of the first pictures that kind of helped put me on the map. In the case of Tootsie, I actually was in the movie, and Dustin was promised a day where he could become famous, and he wanted to do a photo shoot with me in the movie where the character of Dorothy became famous and did magazine covers. In my early 30s, I wasn't shooting pictures for myself, I was shooting pictures for other people. And so I gave myself kind of a self-imposed assignment to start shooting nudes, pulling the camera back, shedding people of their clothes, still maintaining the style of my strong highlights and my hard shadows, but basically letting it evolve into a different body of work that became my work, that I didn't have to please anyone but myself. And Iman was a friend of mine and one of my very early subjects and one of my early nudes, and of course, you know, I love the photograph, and she was such a great beauty, so elegant. You know, I've really always been interested in portraits, and I've never really been particularly successful in my eyes in terms of shooting anything that couldn't talk back to me, because I didn't really have a passion for it. I think a good portrait is when it connects with the viewer, and I think it stems from building a relationship on honesty and trust and confidence between the subject and the photographer. I think that the connection has to be honest and true, and I think a picture is most successful when it doesn't necessarily answer all the questions but leaves something to the imagination.
What really stands out about Greg's work is he has this kind of pure, a sort of refined, classic image. He has this relationship with all of his subjects. They like him a great deal. They're drawn to him, he's drawn to them, so it's a mutually beneficial kind of arrangement.
I've known Greg since I'm 18 years old. I believe I met him on the set of Hairspray, and I was introduced to him by Divine and John Waters. So I've known him since I'm basically a child. He's so gifted and so generous. He's introduced me to so many wonderful people, and I'm just grateful to be able to call him my friend.
I am a collector of Greg's work, and I just love his black and white formations, the way he has the shading and the movement, and to me I love all of his body form motions, where he has the dancers and the nudes. I think that they are truly extraordinary.
Greg is just, you know, sort of an iconic photographer of our time. I feel so connected to the work because I get to know the artist, but I think everyone should come down and be influenced by this beautiful work.
After more than 40 years working in the movie business and shooting motion picture campaigns and high-profile personalities, I realize it's kind of a time for me to take a back seat to that and enjoy life at 62. And I'm really enjoying life by making wine, teaching my workshops, and doing a lot of international traveling. And you know, I'm quite happy. You can't take it with you, so you might as well enjoy it before it's too late. So having the time up here in the country is very valuable to me, and being able to come up and teach is really kind of an ideal situation.